Do you suffer from lifestyle deficit disorder? The purpose of the Perfect Day podcast is to share simple steps and strategies as a powerful antidote to lifestyle deficit disorder. Listen in as I reveal a path away from disillusionment and dissatisfaction to a life of purpose, joy, and freedom, making every day a perfect day. Welcome to the Perfect Day podcast. Perfect days. In a world filled with fear, scarcity, and perfectionism, perfect days are far from perfect, and they're yours for the taking. If I were to tell you they were easy to have, would you want more? I'm Koki Barini, your Perfect Day engineer. The goal of the show is to bring you real-life perfect day successes, struggles, and strategies so that you can have more perfect days in your life. Welcome to the show, and I want to introduce you to Anthony Flynn. Anthony, I'm so glad you're here. Anthony is with The Amazing CEO. You're going to want to look him up at theamazingceo.com. Mm-hmm. Anthony, I'm so glad you're here today, and I want to hear, our listeners want to hear your story. How did you become the amazing CEO?
Wow. Oh, wow. That's a great question. What an opener. Well, first of all, thank you
Pressure's
so much.
on.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me, Koki. It's an honor to be here with you. I've heard so many great things, so it's great to meet you in person.
Oh, gosh.
And
Thanks.
share this platform.
Thank you.
It's a tremendous honor. So, you know, I'd like to tell people I became a CEO when I was around the age of 5. My mom and I were literally put on a bus. She and my dad, who had me, they were teenagers in high school. And we followed him to Peoria, Illinois. He got a pay raise to become a bun tray handler at a bakery in Peoria, Illinois, and came home one night just before Christmas of 1982. They had a big fight, and the next morning we were put on a bus. And of course, there were no cell phones back then. So I remember my mom weeping profusely and literally having to plant quarters in between bus stops in order to figure out where we were going to live that night. And
you were 5.
I was 5, and it was just before Christmas. So I literally left all my Christmas toys behind. We had one blue suitcase, and here we were back home to Memphis on a Greyhound.
Anthony.
And I remember that feeling, Koki. And it was that day. Of course, I didn't know this until I was but that day I remember what it felt like to be powerless and not know exactly the outcome of our lives for that night. Not the future, but literally that night. And I never, ever wanted to be in that position again.
Wow.
And so I spent the rest of my life up to this point figuring out ways to create paths where I could actually have some say, some voice in controlling the outcomes of my life.
Wow, that is so moving. You know, when you said that you were powerless, what hit me was it almost sounded like you were in control, like you were like somewhat like your mom's weeping, you're there, the quarters. Mm-hmm. It sounds like at 5, you had to grow up in a very big way.
Absolutely.
And were you making decisions? Were you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, lots of life. I mean, I remember wiping her tears. And of course, I'm weeping as a kid as well. But yeah, just, you know, again, it was that day. It was that moment, if you will, that day that I knew that I would spend the rest of my life fighting what became a precipitous climb to the top, right? But I wanted to put myself and my family in a position where we could have a voice in the outcomes of our lives.
Unbelievable. I feel, I know this sounds trite, but I feel so blessed to have the likes of you who, I mean, you speak to amazing audiences, the likes of Harvard and Georgia Tech, and the list goes on, TEDx, University of Memphis, Emory. You are right where you're supposed to be. I mean, this story is such a motivational and inspiring story that today, I have to just tell you, as I sit here with you, a male, and this keeps coming up, and I'm sorry for our listeners, but it almost feels sort of reverse sexism, if you will, because I feel like this story of inspiration, for it to be coming from a male, from a true sense of vulnerability, is just something so many of us need to hear. And I know that it's just unfortunate right now. This day and age, there's just so much going on about inappropriateness in the workplace and the men, women, in the Me Too, and I'm a Me Tooer. I'll say that. I don't know where I'm going, but I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I just think our world, our existence, perfect days need more of people like you who are willing to share such a beautiful story.
Thank you.
So I know you must translate that over to your clients' lives and the lives of your family. You've got 2 children and a beautiful wife.
Yes.
Who's re-entered the workforce.
Yes.
That's a great story.
Absolutely.
Which we may get to. You know, I think it's going to be great for listeners to hear that. I asked pre-show, I asked Anthony, who's your favorite person to work with? And his first go-to happened to be someone who doesn't compensate him. And tell me about who your favorite person to work with is.
Yeah, so he's a great friend. He's a mentor of mine. He's in his 70s. His name is Nick, and Nick has been in my life since 2006. And he was a Fortune 200 CEO. He retired in 2005, I think it was, and he happened to serve on a board of an organization that I became the CEO of in Southern California. And we hit it off. I interviewed with him as he was transitioning to that board, and he had industry experience and I had some previous industry experience. And so in that world that we were in at that time, he was the only person who had that big business experience. So they locked me in with him, and man, we hit it off like crazy. And I was telling you, Koki, obviously pre-show that, I mean, he's still buying businesses, selling businesses, buying properties. He's in his 70s, still traveling all over the world and serving on several corporate boards, growing massive companies. I mean, he's an incredible guy, a great father, a great husband, and all of those extras that I look up to in many ways. And I have many people in my life who are similar, but when you ask the question in terms of working with closely, we spend a lot of time together brainstorming, strategic planning, et cetera.
And he's
He's a chairman of the board.
Chairman of your board.
For my foundation.
Yes, for the Gifted
Foundation.
Yes, which deserves a mention because we didn't talk about this, but I'd love for the listeners to hear, you know, part of the Perfect Day formula involves contribution.
Oh.
And that's what the Gifted Foundation is.
Absolutely.
So talk to us about the Gifted Foundation.
Sure. Launched it about 6 years ago, went fully operative about 4 years ago. And the mission formally is to produce marketplace leaders from low-income communities across America. And right now, when we started, we were primarily a college access organization. So we had expanded to 4 cities. And with the plight of the workforce in today's climate, after talking with many companies and realizing the gap in terms of them hiring low to middle skilled labor, we decided to make a bit of a shift and focus on the workforce. So less college access, college readiness, and more workforce specific readiness to help companies close that gap with low and middle skilled talent and labor. And I was mentioning to you that just yesterday, literally, as we record this podcast, just yesterday, we had 18 students hired at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and that's our second cohort. And that's a really big deal because they hired 100% of those they interviewed. Now,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know that the perfect dayers out there, whether they're converts or not, and we all, you know, fall on and off the wheel of lifestyle deficit disorder or LDD because we're on this constant loop, right? Mm-hmm. Full of things to do. And they're sitting here listening to you, this amazing CEO who has also, you know, founded a foundation and has a Fortune 200 amazing executive who is your board chair. And I wonder what they're thinking. Are they thinking that, like, this is so out of reach, and why would I do that? And that's, you know, I'm too busy. And so, you know, the first thing, could you speak to that? Because I want them to hear the why. Why the Gifted Foundation for
Sure.
you? And really, when you peel back the layers of the onion, what's the one word? What does it give you?
Mm-hmm. Generosity is the one word. And in terms of the why, you know, I mentioned being born to a teenage mom, matriculating through the ranks of poverty, obviously growing out of that eventually. And so success became my guide. Right, a kid from poverty who was bused to a suburban wealthy community. I got exposed to things, Koki, that no kid from my background had ever seen. And so when I realized that I had a tangible shot at getting those things, and I emphasize that word, that became my God. I chased after stuff. I chased after things. Well, early in my career, and a lot of ups and downs and mishaps, but I had a great run early. So worked for 2 Fortune 100 companies right after college, had the #1 territory in the country for RJ Reynolds right after college, got recruited, went to 3M, another Fortune 100 company, was the youngest person, to my knowledge, in the country in my assignment. We had a national meeting and a lady walked up to me and said, "How did you get here? You're, frankly, the only African-American male at that event, at that national conference." So young guy, guns blazing. I've got the world handed to me, 4-state territory, all the freedom in the world. I was in Tennessee.
And it sounds like something's coming.
Well, and I lacked fulfillment. So that's where I was going. Yeah, I was miserable, candidly, because I was scared
because I heard all this greatness and I was like,
there was definitely an end. I was building up to it.
Yeah, in my head it was like, where are we going?
I think I consider it the privilege of poverty because what it did for me was allowed me to see that I spent all this time chasing the ride to the top only to get there and realize, wait a minute. Everybody who's in poverty chasing that ride to the top, it's not what you think it is. And so I was blessed to have the courage to walk away from that at 24.
Wow.
There are people who are 64 who are still
correct. Chasing things.
Yeah, chasing things. And at 24, I said, this is for the birds. I'm out of here. And I began to walk the path of fulfillment and generosity.
Can we just say that a perfect day is not done chasing things? Perfect days are not about chasing things. And if I could push you on the generosity, I love Anthony's, one of his core values and that they work with in the workplace is irrational generosity. Love that, irrational generosity. But I want to push you on that word of the Gifted Foundation and why. You said generosity. But isn't it joy or fulfillment?
Yeah, it is.
You sort of already gave me the answer of fulfillment.
But for me, fulfillment is inextricably linked to generosity.
Absolutely.
So I think that's so for me, it's all about giving. It's all about giving.
Right.
So
that's the how.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but I think, if I can nudge a little bit, I think some people, for some people, stuff may be fulfilling for some people. And
good point.
Yeah, you see what I mean?
But it's short-lived.
Yeah, it's short, but in the moment, it feels like the right thing. And I think for me, I kind of cover it with generosity. So what's driving me is this addiction to generosity is what I like to call it. And I don't say that as a negative. I say I can't live without being generous. It's a part of the fabric of my life.
So it's almost like generosity is the cousin of joy. They're related. And fulfillment may be the evil stepsister. It might be fulfillment might be short-lived. I feel like joy is this longer, bigger thing that can't be penetrated. It's like either you have it or you don't.
Yeah.
And whereas fulfillment might be fleeting, because I have. We talked previously off camera about vices with another interviewee on Perfect Day. Don't worry, we won't go there. At least I don't want you to go there with me, because I have my vices.
Yeah, I have plenty. So.
Yes, and so those, sometimes when we feed those vices, it's filling this place of us.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
With that, I think that's a great stepping off point, because I don't want to talk about my vices. And we're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
And when we get back, I would love to talk about how the amazing CEO helps entrepreneurs and C-level executives get through that barrier when you hit that ceiling. Back at you soon with Perfect Day Podcast and Anthony Flynn of The Amazing CEO. here. I am here to begin in gratitude to say thank you for downloading Perfect Day, because you have helped us get #1 bestseller on Amazon. I cannot believe I'm saying those words. So thank you so much. If you've not downloaded your version yet, go to freebook.cokibarini.com. It's freebook.cokibarini.com and get yours today. And again, big thank you. Until we see each other again, make it a perfect day. Welcome back to the Perfect Day podcast. We have Anthony Flynn, CEO of The Amazing CEO. You can find him at theamazingceo.com, and founder of the Gifted Foundation. Anthony, it's been awesome. And I wanted to take this to a really great place. We've been talking about joy and fulfillment. I want to talk about the happiness map and also give a better, more appropriate lead-in to you, which is Anthony is the author of The Executive Pipeline, a step-by-step guide to moving your business idea from dream to reality, and co-author of The Happiness Map.
Yeah.
So go on either of those. I love the happiness theme. So
Okay.
Maybe I'll lead you there.
Let's go there.
Good.
Yeah.
Tell us about The Happiness Map.
Yeah. So actually, that was a book that I was originally going to write alone. I was actually originally going to call it The Happiness Gap, the chasm between getting the things you want and wanting the things you get. Because many people spend their entire life chasing after things they want and then realize by the time they get all those things, there's a gap.
It's not what I wanted.
That's not what I wanted. Yeah. So,
Right.
But I was in a business community, and a friend of mine, Emily Schubert, who has a practice, she's a psychotherapist, PhD, and she was talking about kind of breaking out of the mold of, frankly, seeing clients 6 days a week. And I said, you should write this book with me. And so literally that's how the co-authorship came about. And so we leveraged her clinical expertise with my business background and my practical expertise. I like to say she has the PhD and I have the PhD.
I
right?
love it.
So,
I love
so,
it.
Yeah. So that's how we came up with the concept. We both spend a lot of time around, frankly, a lot of wealthy clients, people who have attained success at the highest levels, who are not totally fulfilled in life and or in work. And that was the essence of why I decided to birth that project.
It's awesome. I first have to recognize co-authoring a book with a woman. I love it. I love it. You know, I know that theme is out there, and I'm sort of focusing on it a little bit in this podcast. It's just what's on my heart. So
Sure.
I just have to put that out there. And so I love that you're that guy.
Yeah.
I love it, which makes you so marketable to any type of C-level, whether it's a woman or a man, because
Sure
that's
thing.
just super approachable. So kudos to that. I'm sure Emily is brilliant and doesn't even want to be seen necessarily as a woman or a man either. But
Sure.
That's awesome. Tell us, is there a trend? Was there a theme of these successful people? Successful is an interesting term that I used.
Sure.
So you can eat me alive for that one.
Yeah.
Was there a theme that emerged? Whether it's a why perhaps they weren't very fulfilled in their work or in their lives, and secondarily, I know the listeners would love to hear if you have a hack or a little like, yeah, this is what we see, and if they would just do X, Y, or Z, for the most part, that's going to get them there. Is it a mantra? Is it a tool?
Sure.
Is it a completely transforming your way of life? Is there something small, and then is there something big?
Sure. So
it's a lot at once. Sorry.
Yeah. I think, man, there was a lot at once. I'll do my best. I'm not
Trends.
I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. So
No, come
I'll do
on.
my best to try to answer that. I think that a common trait that I've seen among a lot of my clients. Now, here's what's interesting. One common trait is that they're all in the standard frame of thinking of success. They're all wildly successful. Right. I mean, that's what's interesting is that these
As
are
measured by
the standards of the world, right? The economy,
Their checkbook?
what they see on TV. Yeah. So you could say their
Okay.
checkbook.
Yeah.
You can say their status in society,
Okay.
what they drive, where they live, the attainment of a position in the marketplace, whatever the case, those
Right.
things. Yet what happens, what I've seen, and this is just one prescription in this space, but a lot of times there's linearity. If I may have just made that word up, but
I like it. I do it every day.
They're linear in that they're hitting it on all cylinders in a certain lane in their lives, but there's much lacking in these other lanes, and the resolve to be able to go after what's missing, what's broken, what's not exactly on. That's a challenge. So they've hit a ceiling.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I'm killing it at work, but wow, my relationship with my wife is a wreck.
So my coach and mentor, Lee Brower, who is mentioned in Perfect Day, and it's a part of Perfect Day process, he calls this your wobble.
I love that.
So a trend that you saw is they have a wobble. Is that fair?
Oh, that's absolutely fair. That's absolutely
Was there a commonality with where the wobble was? Was it with their relationships? Was it...
That's interesting. I would say, I think it varies. I don't know if I can answer that directly because I customize my process for each of my clients. So it's been interesting to see, what's happening in the world of, say, a CPA at a major, a globally renowned CPA firm versus literally a professional athlete who had the stars and lights in one world who's trying to transition into an entirely new world. So there's so many variables, which is why I customize. So people say, I don't have a cookie cutter rubric. I literally sit down with each of my clients in the coaching aspect, at least. And I customize the process based upon the pain points that they share in our engagement.
So when you think about Wobble with these clients and with these awesome people you get to work with, you do have a framework for those key areas in their life that you're looking at. Share that with us.
So it's predominantly people, product, process, the 4 pillars of business, which are management, operations, marketing, and finance. And the 5th P is philanthropy. All right. So that's kind of on the operational side of who they are. And then on the, just what I call the general human side of who they are, it's 5 domains, which are, personal, family, career, spiritual, and community. So
awesome.
it's you can talk to me about what's happening in your personal life, meaning your world outside of the workplace and what you do in the street, in the streets, your home life, your internal person, your internal being, or we can talk very specifically about how you deliver your talents to the world, to the marketplace, and we can talk about those existential characteristics of yourself. And so I have these domains on both sides, and that's how I roll.
Right. I love it. I love it because when kept in check, that's probably your vision of success, right?
Exactly.
Then they become successful.
Yes. Yeah. And I will say that frame came from interactions with so many others. So I would say that's been empirical data summarized into those bullet points.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Over time.
You've got the Malcolm Gladwell, 2-time expert going here, right?
Yeah.
In your current role. So that's awesome. Help us understand. So you identify that these individuals have what I call a wobble or a deficiency somewhere. Is there, help us with one of your tools.
Sure.
Because I know you've got a lot in your toolkit.
Absolutely.
Is there one that's your go-to?
This is a game changer, in my opinion.
Oh, I love game changers.
Yeah.
Okay, get out
and it's simple. It's simple, but people miss this so much. So there's one example is there's always an argument of not having enough time. Right?
Not enough time
in the day. And I push back on that severely because my philosophy is, how does everyone else who's hitting it out of the park in those areas where you struggle, how do they have the time?
Right.
To hit it out of the park in those areas? We don't have a time management issue. We have an energy management issue.
Okay.
And by that, I mean, you probably don't value success in that area the way you value success in the other areas.
Right.
So you're not putting the energy appropriately into that area.
You're choosing something else.
Exactly. So when I help you understand how you can create a felt value for success in that area, all of a sudden it's interesting how your energy can start to shift to focus on that pain point, because time is time.
Right.
And I'm very transparent. So an example for me would be, my relationship with my wife, spending so much time, not having the most successful model growing up in terms of family dynamics, and spending so much time building my dream that frankly, it came at the expense of my relationship with my wife. So I had to, Koki, as one example of the many wobbles that I've had, I had to figure out how to recalibrate and start putting more energy and effort into my marriage. And so that was an investment of energy, not just time. I had all the time in the world, but it was a shift in my thinking. It was a shift in the way I interacted and communicated with my wife. It was a shift in the dynamic in my house. I mean, it's a radical shift. I had to learn some things, who I hung around, what I read, what I listened to, what I watched. All of that had to shift in order for me to be successful. And I'm still on pace, right?
Right.
I'm not fully there yet, but admittedly, but the point is that if I want to see things change in my life, I've got to be willing to put the energy into changing those things in my life.
Right. Energy is one of my favorite words.
Yeah.
Can I share with you one of my energy hacks?
Please.
And this is the formula that we give out for free to anyone for the taking to make more perfect days in their life. And it's called 411. And I would love it if you were to find some way that this might resonate with you and the tools that you bring to the people you work with. But I challenge people to get up at 5:30 in the morning. And so there's many things that goes into that. Because if you do the math, it means that okay, so I kind of need to go to bed early.
Sure.
Right? Because you're getting up at 5:30 in the morning.
Yep.
So it breeds this whole system of good habits. But, one of the things I believe is you can sleep when you're dead.
Yep.
And so the transformational part of this process is that most of us are still asleep at 5 or 5:30. So you get up out of bed. It's 5:30 in the morning. You come up with the 4 things that you're going to do that are going to be transformational in your day. You would not have done these things. You would not. I'm not talking about putting on your checklist that you need to go, send off your taxes, or you need to call your child's homeroom teacher. The things on your list that we're going to get done anyway, it's not what goes on the list. What goes on the list is vulnerability, being brave, things that are going to rectify your wobble. So they're the hard things. And sometimes they may take 10 seconds. They may take an hour. But these are the 4 things in your day that you should try and do in order to have a perfect day. So, we talked about this earlier. It's like, so you can miss a flight and not get home to your kids one day.
Yep.
But you can go to your 411 list and go, I did it all, so today is going to be a perfect day. It's just a mindset. So, we're coming to a close here. I want you to have the last seconds here in the podcast. I want to know, what do you do to keep your mindset in check for positivity? Because you're a positive, awesome soul, and I know you bring that to your clients. So how do you tap in and channel that?
So it's interesting you brought up. So I average between 3 and 4 a.m. awakening every morning.
Wow.
And so I'm a king of early rising.
So you're going to be on 401 Live with us next week then, right?
Hey, let me know. Seriously, I'm up early.
Game on, Anthony.
I'm literally up early. So that's
okay.
And the first thing I do personally every morning before I literally even get out of bed is my Bible study.
I knew you were going to say it, and I'm glad you brought it in.
And I
God
actually
needed to be here today, and He is.
And
Thank
I literally
you.
share with, and as a tool of, I support my team. So I share my scriptures with my board, with our staff, with my accountability partner every single morning, at least Monday through Friday. And it's a way that I don't know what's going to hit me that day, right? On any given day.
Right.
So I try to control the controllables, and I feed my spirit in preparation for any major thing that may pop up that day that I wasn't expecting. And I think a lot of people, they pop out of bed and they take off running. And there's urgency throughout their day. And they've really never taken any time to just breathe and meditate. And so that's another thing. I drive my son to school 45 minutes every morning. So after I'm up in the morning on a workout day, I go and work out. If I'm not working out, I'm working. And so I take a break. So my lunch break, right, by then is taking my son to school every morning, if you will. And that's 45 minutes of time in the car to interact with him and then just listen to jazz. So I listen to smooth jazz or classical music with no lyrics. And it's quiet time.
I love it.
And then I jump into the chaos of the engines and the sirens and everything else.
Right.
And the calls and the emails and the tasks and everything else.
So there is the perfect day recipe with Anthony Flynn, the amazing CEO. It's jazz, meditation, scripture, children, and working out. I'm going to adopt that. I'll start Saturday.
Yeah.
Anthony, thank you so much for being on the show.
It's been an honor, Coach.
Thank you very much for joining us. Until we speak again, make sure you make it a perfect day.